Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm Chris Love.
And I'm Jane Mackey.
Hello, I'm Zeke Horowitz, and I'm going to tell you about this week's nominees for Stud of the Week. First off, we got Morgan Kiss from Yale, who wins A Division, fending off Erica and Deirdre at the NISA Women's Champs, showing us it actually does matter that you practice women's fleet racing in the spring. We've got Katia De Silva, who sailed B Division for Georgetown, usually a crew, but hops on the tiller for the Mesa Women's Champs and gets a 39-point victory. Very, very impressive. And we have Jack McGuire, A Division skipper from Bowdoin, who I hadn't really heard of before this, but he shows us he's a real player, winning A Division at the Admirals Cup. And you guys selected Jack McGuire.
This is our last Chalk Talk episode of the regular season. That's because this weekend we have the last major competitions taking place for the co-ed champs trying to qualify for the semi-finals for nationals. There are 36 spots and we'll be analysing those in our next Chalk Talk episode right before nationals.
So we don't have time to give a full rundown, but why don't we at least put up our predictions for the winners of each of these regattas happening this weekend. Well, for our regular season finale, we wanted to do something a little bit different, and so we're focusing on a growing issue, as I see it, in college sailing, and that's the widening of the performance gap. So over the next several minutes here, we're going to be exploring this topic and talking to some of the experts in ICSA, from President Mitch Brindley to some of the coaches, and we'll hear from Zeke as well.
Need a new dry suit? Enter US Sailing's Dry Suit Instagram contest for your chance to win a new Gill dry suit. All you have to do is take an Instagram video that explains why you need a new dry suit. In the caption, tag @USSailing1 and @GillGear, and be sure to use the hashtag DrySuitContest. The 3 finalists will be posted to the US Sailing Facebook page on Monday, April 28th for fan voting. The video with the most likes after 48 hours will be crowned the winner of a new Gill dry suit and will be invited to join me on Chalk Talk. Time to get those cameras rolling and let's get creative.
We want to kind of get started by this premise that there is, in fact, a widening gap between the top teams in college sailing who are taking their organization to a new level. Either they're being funded by the athletic department, or they're well coached, they're well organized. It seems to me that more and more teams are falling into this category, but we still have an enormous number of teams who are kind of in the club category, the old school, self-coached, self-run, self-fundraised category of college sailing. Do you see this widening gap, and do you see this as a challenge for ICSA?
Well, I don't think it's a new challenge. I think college sailing has always had that situation where there was a difference in competitive abilities, funding levels, organizational structures, all that across the board. And we certainly have some great programs that are well-supported varsity programs. We also have those that are well-supported club programs, and we also have those that are struggling to exist, and they may not be here next year. That's always been the case, though, in college sailing.
So there is a mentality, I think, west of the Mississippi that college sailing is, boots and a life jacket, and very grassroots, no coaching, just going out and having events and having fun with it. And there's nothing wrong with that, because at the essence of it, they are enjoying our sport. There is this growing gap that you said, that is coming between teams like a Stanford and a BC and a Georgetown and so on, that want something more out of it, that want more collegiate athletics for it. And that, I think, I'm not speaking for them, but certainly for myself, I think that's going to be the survival mode for college sailing. And so we have to kind of find a model that'll work for both sides, because the gap is widening, and we're looking at ICSA legislation that we keep trying to aim in the middle and shoot the gap, and it's not really working. It's really trying to pull the top teams back, not the top teams, but the more funded teams, the more established teams back, and it's trying to pull the less funded, less established teams to an area where they don't even want to be at.
There are 204 teams considered active in the ICSA, and often on our show we only talk about 40 of those teams. So Kathy, interested to hear a little bit about how your team approaches college sailing and how you guys feel about national champs and that sort of thing.
Well, a little quick background on our program. I've been coaching the U for 14 years, and it is a club sport. It's student-led under the umbrella of the Rec Sports Department at the University of Minnesota. There are 28 other sports that fall under our umbrella, and we have about maybe $8,000 to $10,000 worth of funding that comes from the university, and we use that primarily for vehicles to get to and from regattas.
It seems like some of the short-term changes have been changes to the nationals format this year to account for the fact that there are more competitive teams who can sail at that high level.
Well, the changes were to make the nationals the best event, the most competitive events of the year. The national championship should pick or determine the national champion, and in order to do that, you should have the best teams there. We also feel very strongly that there is a national presence and distribution of berths. We really haven't changed the format that much for co-eds. We've just tried to enhance the experience for everyone, particularly those that don't make it to the finals.
I was very pleased to welcome that this year. The semifinals, while we enjoyed that particular competition, it did add a full weekend of travel for us. And we felt that it sort of eliminated us from the opportunity to go and compete at a national level with all the teams.
One of the focuses for the past few years has been to not focus so much on that nth team in college sailing, the 221st team or whatever it might be, but it's to focus on the team that is the 40th team, the team that is making that step from a self-run program to a coach program. Those are the bigger steps, because those increase the competitive depth in college sailing.
As we continue to see more teams that are making that jump, whether it's the 40th team or the 50th team or whatever, at some point, do you think about just splitting competition in general and not worrying so much about having national representation at nationals, but simply having the best competition, there?
Are you looking for the best sailing boots on the planet? Sperry has taken the world by storm with their new Seahiker waterproof boot. Developed and tested by the U.S. sailing team, the Seahiker was built with performance in mind. Great alternative to the Igley boot, the waterproof Seahiker comes with side lacing and an ultra-grip sole. Use coupon code ICSAS14 at www.zimsailing.com to get 20% off your new boots.
There's coach boat talk about those kind of things for years, and probably certainly as long as I've been involved in college sailing, those kind of discussions have taken place. We're not any further along towards that now than we were before.
I think that's probably going to happen. It's probably going to have to happen, probably sooner rather than later.
Well, it certainly is going to be something that we're going to have to discuss in the future. I come from a skiing background, and when I was coaching skiing a long time ago, I was teaching or coaching at an NCAA school in Reno, Nevada, and that was just about the time that it was like the haves and the have-nots. They split and formed two different leagues.
If you do that split, let's say next year, 2015,
are you going to be able to get 18 boats on the line on a weekend at the high level?
I think you will, because again, I don't think we can make a line depending on how much money you're putting into the program. It can't be division there, but it has to be what that team's mentality is. And that's a hard thing to legislate. It's more so what the team wants. Do they want to be a high-end team? Do they want to establish their team within the university? And I don't think it can be divided between varsity and club either, because you look at a Brown. I mean, Brown is a club team, but it's varsity by everybody else's definition. And, a UVM is another good example. I mean, they work very hard for their funding, there's no doubt about it, and they fundraise and everything else, but they function very much like a varsity team. And I think there's a lot of examples like that in New England and in the Mid-Atlantic, and I think we're starting to see that in CESA as well. And so, and even in the MCSA, like a school like Wisconsin.
Michigan and Wisco.
Yeah, and Minnesota. I think those are all good examples that, you can't, they want to go. I think if we went tomorrow, they would want to jump on board with the more established program. I don't have a better name for it right now, but the more established program to have that.
I'm not sure that sailing's, is at that point yet. I'd hate to see us not have the opportunity to compete for a national championship. We choose to live in Minnesota. We have our challenges as far as not being able to sail year-round. The funding, we're very creative in how we fund our program. But I do like the opportunity. We went to the Thompson Trophy a week and a half ago, and it was awesome. It was great to be able to sail against some of the best schools and see what they're doing. And if you made 2 leagues, I'm not sure that that's going to ever get accomplished at that level. So, the discussion's been around for a while. I've participated in those discussions. I really don't have a formal opinion yet on it because I want to continue to listen to both sides of the equation, but I don't think that we're there yet.
Some of our rules are playing and practice rules and things like that to provide a box in which we can compete that mirrors other collegiate sports. And so a recreational program might not care about that. They just want to go sailing, race against other like programs, and that's fine. And in the future, maybe that's a direction that college sailing can look to support.
I don't know what the right model is. I don't know whether it's to go NCAA and go for the full bore. I think there's definite pros and cons on both sides of that. Or if we become more of established, or we change what the definition of ICSA is, we have more of an established sport. I think there we have a lot more teams.
I guess it was last year at the winter meeting, there was a committee assigned to look into what it would look like if ICSA were to move to being governed by NCAA. Has there been any findings on that? Have you learned anything about that?
Contrary to popular belief, the NCAA is actually pretty flexible when you start the sport and when you come in, because they really look to experts within the sport to establish what the rules should be or what's acceptable in the sport and kind of fit that into already the given structure of the NCAA. So I think that's interesting. It's a little bit more flexible than we think. The issue of can we have a D1 school compete with a D3 school and stuff like that. I think there is flexibility within that, and we've seen other sports like rifle and some skiing and stuff like that where the D1, 2, and 3 kind of goes away, and it's just an NCAA championship.
Still been doing a lot of just investigation on that, talking to a lot of different people, getting whether it's people within administrators and so forth from various schools, individuals that might have some insight on the NCAA. There's one question of whether college sailing wants to go that path, and then there's the other question of whether the NCAA wants us. There hasn't been a men's sport added to the NCAA in many, many, many years. It would be pretty easy to submit a proposal to the NCAA for an emerging sport for women. It's a lot harder to do something that we're bringing the men or co-ed along with it.
If you think of a Harvard or an MIT or an ODU or a St. Mary's, they're pretty much already sailing under NCAA rules, and for them to be more legitimate within their athletic departments, having it organized under the NCAA umbrella makes them look and feel like all the other sports that are getting significant funding at their universities. At this particular point in the Midwest, there is not one single varsity program, and I'm not sure that making it an NCAA sport, for example, if the women's part of it became an NCAA sport, that's going to change our landscape in the Midwest.
In the end, do we want all this legislation piled on us? Do we want another body telling us what to do that doesn't really know our sport? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough part of it.
I do think that after listening to the presentations at the winter meeting from some of the top coaches in the country, that they really feel that this is a direction that sailing needs to go to give it more credibility.
The pros are that we have another body that can help our sport, that can legislate us, because I feel very uncomfortable as a coach legislating another coach. Or telling another coach what they can or cannot do. I feel very comfortable being part of the discussion what the rule could be. It should be, but at the end, it shouldn't be a coach that's enforcing the rule, and that's exactly what's happening right now.
So the big thing is probably in a student welfare line of it, and then also college. A lot of the college coaches that are involved in running college sailing have been feel that we should have some greater oversight over ourselves.
Mitch Brindley, God bless him, does a fantastic job, and he's a great guy and a phenomenal coach. But it's hard for him, to go to his peers and have to control his peers and have to rise above it and be well beyond a coach. That's a very tough role. We certainly don't pay him nearly enough to do that role. And in the end, it really shouldn't be him. It shouldn't be a coach doing that. It should be another paid advisor that we have kind of doing this whole thing. I think if we forget about NCAA, but if we go to an organized college sailing model or a different definition of ICSA that we've been talking, I think it'd be important for us to fund a true president or commissioner, was probably a better word for it, as a commissioner of the ICSA that is not a coach and that is impartial in those ways and can legislate properly from that. But again, that is right now a dream up in the clouds, and it's certainly not on the table right now to have anything done yet.
Good discussion. Thanks to everybody that participated. It's great to hear the different viewpoints. This is not over. It's something that we'll be continuing to follow, and we're waiting to see what will happen.
So it seems like the ICSA is slowly making changes to make college sailing more like other NCAA sports, things like what they did with the semifinals this year. Now we're going to have a whole mess of teams at the Nationals, make it more tournament style. Because of that, we're not going to have an All-American banquet anymore, things like that. We've also now got the trophy presentation for team racing is going to happen with all the teams still in their pennies right when they hit the beach. So things like that are making strides towards other NCAA sports. So it begs the question, why not just take a huge leap and really just go for it? We could do things like create Division II or Division III or club teams or junior varsity teams, whatever you want to call them, to help accommodate those other 160 teams that we don't even think about. Perhaps make things a little more fun for them. I've been kind of talking it out with a bunch of college sailing coaches this spring and heard lots of crazy ideas, things like completely do away with laser nationals, no more single-handed in college, or maybe just make the fall about fleet racing and the spring about team racing completely. So we won't do any fleet racing in the spring, which sounds a little weird, but because what do the women's teams do then? Do they then team race as well in the spring? Are there enough teams that could field the women's team racing team? So there's a lot of things to think about. I've even heard ideas where the college sailing nationals is only team racing, and that happens in the spring. Maybe we can do that, have the club team race national championships right before the Division I or whatever you want to call it. But these types of things could make it really more like NCAA sports. Maybe we get picked up by the NCAA and start getting scholarships for kids and things like that. So I think there's a lot of roads that ICSA could go down to maybe improve and try to help kind of spread the wealth across the board. Maybe the biggest question in all that is, how do we make the split? Who decides who's a club team and who's a varsity team? Is it like a budget thing? Do the teams get to decide? Is there maybe a qualification process? Maybe there's a relegation like you see in the Premier League over in British soccer. So let's see what happens.
And that's going to do it for us for the regular season of Chalk Talk. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at the end of May for our Nationals edition of Chalk Talk. In the meantime, you can follow us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/College Sailing Chalk Talk.
Good luck to everyone sailing this weekend.
That's what I was going to say.
So long.